Welcome, gather round the fireside and listen to a tale of Fionn Mac Cumhaill, Deirdre of the Sorrows, Grainne Wail. From giants right down to fairies, of both the trooping and solitary, and those who are sometimes scary. Anything goes by the fireside. Yeah. Fireside, the Puka fireside, the Marrow fireside. Kings and queens fighting heroes, don't you run from the fun, there's no need to hide. Sit by the fireside. Fireside. Hello and welcome to Fireside, the Irish storytelling podcast. Each episode of Fireside, we take a story from folklore or mythology, retell it, have a chat about the tale itself and about the craft, culture and history of storytelling. My name is Kevin C. O'Lahan. I am your host and your Fireside Bard. Welcome to episode 97 of Fireside. Today on the Irish Storytelling Podcast, we return to the world of the Fianna and we tell the story of Fionn Mac Cumhaill in the old man's house. But first, I'm back. I can't believe I'm saying that. Not back from taking a break or anything. I am back recording from home in my mobile studio. I cannot believe it. This is what I did over the first lockdown here in Ireland. For the first few months I was recording from home, and then I was able to go back into the Head Stuff Podcast Network studios. But now, with level 5 announced in Ireland and restrictions back in place, Head Stuff was forced to close its doors once again. And so I'm back recording from the mobile travelling bard studio, which I'm very fortunate to have. I'm delighted that I can do the podcast still at a substantial quality from home. It's very rewarding to be able to know I can do that, like I was able to when I was on tour in America last year. It's great to know that I have the facility to and the equipment to do it. But it is just, it's hard not to feel like a step backward again, to be back recording from home just when we thought we were out of the woods. But it goes to show we really aren't. But if all of Ireland does respect the restrictions over the next 6 weeks, we may actually be able to salvage a Christmas out of it. So it is for the greater good. And the good news is, of course, that it means that Fireside will in no way slow down. We will still be writing, recording, and releasing every single week throughout the pandemic and beyond. And I hope that you are a new listener listening in a year's time, as I said 7-8 months ago. I hope you're listening in a further year's time and we are finally out of this deep, dark wood. With that, I would like to give you a big welcome to any new listeners, any returning listeners. You're all very, very welcome. Thank you so much for your continued support. Please do follow me over on Instagram at Fireside Bard, all one word. It is the best place to get in touch with me if you want to just say hello or let me know about what you like or don't like about the podcast. I always love the sense of community we're building over on Instagram. Contact me at thefiresidebard@gmail.com if you don't have Instagram or if you aren't on social media. And if you really want to support the podcast, you can do so over at patreon.com/Fireside Podcast, where you can join our ever-growing list and a community of very loyal benefactors. Want to give another big shout out to our most recent patrons for this week, or this month, which is Shane Connolly, Alex Hanley and Stephen Reno. I just wanted to give a shout out. I'm not going to name them, but if you are a patron who subscribed in the last week, there was a patron who subscribed and then deleted the pledge immediately. Now, I don't know if you just did that and pledged to Fireside and then thought the better of it and decided you didn't want to or weren't in a position to, or you might have thought that if you click subscribe and then click unsubscribe, it still takes the money out, but it doesn't. Patreon only takes the subscription out at the end of each month, so you have the full month to decide. Just if you are that listener out there and that's what you thought has happened, that is what happened. But I won't name and there's no shame. And if you did just subscribe and then could decide you couldn't, that is also totally fine. But just a heads up if you hadn't realised that. But the Patreon is there entirely as an egalitarian model of soundness. It is not going to stop my output of this podcast. It's just helping build the larger world of Fireside outside of it. As I've been saying, I haven't touched any of the Fireside earnings in the Patreon. It has been slowly building, particularly over the last year. And now we're starting to have a bit of a kitty together to take Fireside to the next level. I'm telling all the patrons about it over on the Patreon, and I will be able to announce before Christmas the next plans to take Fireside to the next level and establish it properly as the empire I want it to become. But before that, we'll have to get down to our story in our second lockdown. We're going to get through this, folks, and I love hearing from each and every one of you about Fireside being some small comfort to you in these increasingly strange and difficult times. And I hope you all enjoyed the Halloween special last week. And I want to give a special shout out to RTE, the RTE Lifestyle, for featuring Fireside as its top 5. It's number 1, I would like to say, in its top 5 podcasts to listen to over the Halloween break. Those kind of things really help when you're an independent podcast, being included on lists, trying to reach as wide an audience as possible. And they're just great quotes and great links to attach to make you feel like you have more to show. So thank you very much to RT and for featuring us on that. The story for this week, can you believe it? We are returning to Fionn Mac Cumhaill, the very place we began, where we spent so much of actually the time I was in America. We are now returning. So 2 weeks ago we had the story of Thor in the Land of Giants. I teased out that was almost a 2-parter, in that I read Thor in the Land of the Giants in Neil Gaiman's Norse Mythology book when it came out a few years ago. Brilliant story, really has a lasting impression. And then a couple of years later, I was sent a link by a friend to a harpist and storyteller called Robin Williamson, not to be confused with Robin Williams. He was a Scottish harper and storyteller. I want to listen to more of his stuff. Actually, I haven't listened to too much more of his stuff, but he sent me this link of Robin Williamson playing this piece on the harp and telling this story, and the whole time I'm listening to it, I'm just telling myself, I know this from somewhere. And sure enough, I realised that it was actually the story of Thor in the Land of the Giants, just with Fionn Mac Cumhaill skin over it. But it's not the exact same. And so I wanted to tell both versions of the same story to see how the same kernel can become 2 very different pieces of popcorn, to use an original but probably very bad metaphor. Because I love both versions for very different reasons, and they don't actually have any literal crossovers, but it will become very clear that they are from the same story, and it isn't just a wallpaper. They are the same kernel, but just very different end products. And I hope you enjoy it. We'll talk a bit more afterwards, but this is Fionn Mac Cumhaill in the Old Man's House on Fireside. Fionn Mac Cumhaill in the Old Man's House. Once the great hero Fionn Mac Cumhaill was out hunting with his loyal band of warriors, the Fianna. Fionn had tasted the salmon of knowledge, which gave him all there was to know. If ever he had a problem, he would simply stick his thumb in his mouth and would know the truth. He had defeated Alain the Burner and had been declared the leader of the Fianna, overthrowing and earning the loyalty of Gull MacMorna, who had killed Fionn's father, Cumhaill. Fionn had loved and lost Sive, his one true love, who had been turned from a Tuatha De Danann princess into a fawn, back into a princess, and then back into a fawn again. Fionn had lost Sive, but had found by her his only son and heir, Oisin, the bard of the Fianna. On this particular hunting trip, Fionn was growing old in legend and in years. It was late, and most of the Fianna had set up camp for the night already, except for 3, Fionn, Mac Cumhaill, and Diarmid o' Divna. Folks may remember Mac Cumhaill, or Conan the Bald, as the brother of Mac Cumhaill, leader of Clan Morna and rival turned ally turned rival again of Fionn Mac Cumhaill. Well, Conan was bigger, meaner, and balder than his brother, but was nevertheless loyal to the leader of the Fianna. Since Fionn and the 2 Morna brothers had been trapped at the hostel of the Quicken Trees, where due to an enchantment Mac had the skin ripped off his back and replaced with the wool of a sheep. Since that time, once a year, Conan had to be routinely shaved, and the wool from his back was used to keep all the Fianna warm for the winter. Diarmid o' Divna, or Diarmid of the Love Spot, so called because of a birthmark on his forehead, which when any woman saw they would instantly fall in love with him. He had not yet run off with Fionn's bride-to-be, Grania, and so had not yet fallen out with his best friend and loyal commander. Diarmid, Mac and Fionn Mac Cumhaill would not quit, and hunted deep into the forest and late into the night beneath the glow of the full moon. When Fionn finally decided that they should cut their losses, the 3 warriors found that they were well and truly lost. There was not a sign of a fire's light from the campsite, no smell of cooking meat, no sound of laughter or song. "We will have to find somewhere to stay for the night," said Fionn. "I'm not going into any more hostels," said Mac. "We'll find somewhere safe," reassured Fionn. Diarmid, as the youngest of the 3, scouted forward in search of lodgings. Like clockwork, he came sprinting back. "I've found a cottage. Lights on, smoke coming from the chimney. Looks inviting," said Diarmid. "Sounds too inviting," said an unreassured Mac. The heroes approached the cottage, and Fionn knocked on the door. There was no answer, so Fionn presumed and walked inside. Once they were across the threshold, the 3 heard the voice of an old man. "Ah, there they are, the 3 heroes, traipsing around the forest, hunting and killing and eating whatever they please. Now you just walk into my house unannounced." Neither Fionn nor any of the Fianna were at all used to being spoken to in this manner. "My apologies, sir. I assure you I did knock." Never mind. Come inside and close that door and keep that cold out." Diarmid dutifully obeyed. The 3 approached the warmth of the fireside, where they found the old man, as old a man as any of them had ever seen, who was gently stirring a pot. "You're just in time. I was just about to make dinner. Goat stew." "I confess we are hungry this evening. We've been hunting all day and have had not much luck," said Fionn. Not to worry, said the old man. "Just do me a favour and tether that goat for me and bring him here." "What goat?" began Mac, and before he could wait for an answer, all 3 turned to see an angry white goat galloping, kicking, and bleating around the room. "That goat," said the old man with a wry smile. "It should be no problem for heroes like you." The old man handed Mac a piece of rope and left the room. A flustered, frustrated Mac took the rope and approached the goat, but try as he could not catch it. He might grab a hoof or a horn, but the goat would just as easily slip his grasp. Conan was stubborn and would not stop trying until Fionn turned to Diarmid and said, "Diarmid, you put an end to this embarrassment." Diarmid stepped in. He was younger and faster than Conan Mal. After Fionn, he was the best fighter in the Fianna, yet even still he could not tether the goat. Fionn eventually had to assert his leadership by trying himself, but even he did not succeed. The old man returned to the room to the 3 angry, sweaty warriors and 1 very excited goat. He took the rope from Fionn and, like a rigged carnival ring-toss game, lassoed the goat and brought it to heel. The 3 warriors could not speak with astonishment. Later, when the meal was prepared, the warriors were served their food by a young woman. As she often is in stories such as this, she was the most beautiful any of them had ever seen. Even Fionn, who had only ever had eyes for his beloved Scythe, had to admit the beauty of this young girl. As the Lothario, the Casanova, Diarmid approached her. His fringe was hiding his love spot, but it was ready to be brushed aside. Diarmid said to the girl, "I am Diarmid O'Divna, and truly it will have been worth getting lost in the woods tonight to have seen your face. Perhaps the gods have brought us together for this one full moon." But the young girl looked at Diarmid in disgust. "You don't recognize me, but you had me once, and it's little you cared for me then. Now, I don't belong to any of you, and there's not one of you that wouldn't give anything to have me again." With that, the young girl left the room. Not one of the 3 heroes slept that night. They could not fathom how none could tether the goat, and Diarmid had not been rejected by a girl since he had hit puberty. Before leaving the old man's house the next morning, Fionn Mac Cumhaill approached and said, "Why did you speak to us as you did when we first arrived? And how is it that you could tether that goat when none of us could? And who is that girl who says she was once ours, yet not one of us has ever seen her before?" The old man conceded, "All is not as it seemed last night. You 3 spend all your time hunting, spending time you will never get back. That girl's name was Youth, and it's little any of you cared for her while she was yours, and she'll never be yours again. The goat was named the World, and none can control the world but me, and my name is Death." The end. Folks, as you all know, Fireside is a proud son of the Headstuff Podcast Network, which is Ireland's largest network of independent podcasts and a loving home for the creative and indeed the curious. There are so many other podcasts I could recommend to you on the network, some of which inspired me to approach Headstuff myself. Here's a taste of one you might enjoy.
Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Porrig, and we host the Behavioural Vaccine Podcast.
We're behavioural scientists who met through improv comedy.
And so each week we bring the 2 things together to explore how behavioural science can be applied, but in a fun way.
There's a little bit of research.
There's a good bit of messing.
And there's loads of practical tips on everything from how to save money to how to maintain your friendships.
Think about this like a behavioural vaccine to get you through winter 2020.
Go on, sure, give us a listen.
And that was the tale of Fionn Mac Cumhaill in the old man's house on Fireside, and I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, delicious, delicious little tale now. See, I've no doubt that the Norse version of this story, the far, far better known version, was the original of these 2 at least. You know, there may have been other stories in other cultures. For example, it's something that I didn't talk about at the time, but when I did it, the story of Bicru's feast and the trial of beheading, where the creature comes to challenge Cuchulainn to chop off his head and to have him do the same thing. I never realised that any British listeners may be familiar with the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is one of the oldest texts in English literature. It's up there with Beowulf and like earlier than the Canterbury Tales and everything. And that is the same story as that is the trial of beheading. And I've no doubt that Sir Gawain and the Green Knight probably came first there and was repurposed as a later neo-myth of Cuchulainn when these stories were written down for the first time in the 10th, 11th, 12th century. And we probably have a similar case here. So the Norse myths were written down by Snorri Sturluson or Snurluson, an incredibly Nordic name. And he wrote the Prose Edda, which is one of the great medieval texts of all time in any culture. We're so lucky to have it, and that's why the Norse myths exist in such a beautiful full form, and they are complemented by the earlier work, the Poetic Edda, which Snorri based much of his works from. So we have those two very much gospel texts for Norse mythology. And the story of Thor in the Land of the Giants features in that, but it is thought that Thor in the Land of the Giants was quite a late tale to be adapted. So obviously Snorri was writing the Prose Edda in the 12th or 13th century, so hundreds of years after the conversion to Christianity. And it's thought that Thor in the Land of the Giants was a later tale, a post-Christian Norse world tale, because Thor and Loki are perceived closer to mortals, as great as their deeds are in that particular story. And so I don't know when exactly this became a tale of the Fianna, because I haven't been able to find a written text for it. I adapted this from this audio recording of Robin Williamson, which I owe a great debt to, and to my friend who introduced this to me. But what I love about it is it never crosses quite the same territory. So let's start with the similarities. First of all, we have the two main things, the three heroes trapped in a place where everything is not as it seems. That's the bones, that's where they're both the same. But where they greatly differ is that, for starters, in the Norse tale, there are far more challenges. You know, each Thor, Loki, and Thialvi is given his own challenge. I should say this, I'll be talking a lot about Thor in the Land of the Giants now, which was the episode 2 episodes ago. If by chance you haven't listened to that episode, I probably would listen to that, or this might get boring, or I don't know. But just as a disclaimer. But so in Thor the Land of the Giants, you have Loki, Thor, and Thialvi travelling to the Land of Giants, where they end up at the court of Utgard Loki, the king of the giants. And Utgard Loki challenges each of them to a different test of skill. So Loki has to eat, Thialvi has to run, Thor has to drink, and then Thor also has to wrestle a cat, and Thor has to wrestle an old wet nurse, all to prove his strength, and none of them can do any of the tasks at all. And then it is later revealed that it is all a mystery, and that Loki couldn't eat fast enough because his opponent was actually Wildfire, who eats everything in his path. Thialvi was racing against Thought, and Thought is always faster than action, and Thor couldn't finish this drinking horn because he was actually drinking the oceans of the world, and he drank so much that he actually created tides, low and high, which is how the Norse explained the concept of tides. And the cat he was trying to lift up was actually Jormungandr, the world serpent, and the old wet nurse was Old Age, who weakens all in the end. And that's probably where it gets closer to this story of Fionn Mac Cumhaill in the old man's house, because we don't have old age, we have the opposite, we have youth. So we have Fionn and Conan Mal and Diarmid O'Divna. We have these three very different warriors who we've encountered together before. Although it's nice to have another story with Fionn and Diarmid when they're not on the outs. And similarly with Conan Mal. Conan Mal we've only really met in the Hostel of the Quicken Trees. And it has been so long since we did the Fianna. It was, if I was in America, that was, February, March of 2019, which certainly seems very long ago now. So I just wanted to give a bit of a refresher, and as much for myself as anybody else, of the world that we were in, with Fionn talking about salmon and knowledge, Alain the Burner, and the connection with Gull MacMorna, Gull, his enemy turned friend, turned enemy again, and Conan Mal has this kind of relationship with him as well. And in the Hostel of the Quicken Trees, we had Conan Mal being stuck to the ground, and then, yes, having his skin ripped off and the patch fastened with the skin of a sheep, and that he had to be routinely shaved every year. Incredible comic, very Irish image, of the absurdly comic placed in an otherwise quite serious tale. That's if we had any trademarks in our mythology, I would say that would be one. But so we have these three figures. You have, Fionn, the everyman stoic older character. Conan Mal we picture as this big, brutish, bald, looking kind of like Zangief in Street Fighter. And then we have Dermot O'Divna, young, very good looking, picture him much slimmer, wafier. We have these three, this motley crew, and they go into this old man's house. And there they encounter this goat. And the goat seems as quite a Norse element as well, because we have in Thor and the Land of Giants, we have the two goats that Thor pulls his chariot up to Thialvi's house, and his goats who he is able to kill, make goat stew, and then rebuild the next day. So we have this goat who is the world. And there's something beautiful about the idea of a goat as the world, because goats they can be quite violent. A goat will charge at you, and they have those similar eyes that sheep have, the like kind of slanted, slit-like eyes. They're really terrifying to actually look in the same in the eyes with. They have their horns, this temper they are known for. They buck and thrash. They can root themselves to the wall. And there's something about the rough unpredictability, but something still quite endearing about goats that makes it seem like a really actually apt metaphor for the unpredictability and strange beauty of the world. So it seems quite silly to have the world as a goat, but I actually think there's a lot more to it. So we have the bucking, thrashing goat who cannot be controlled by anyone. Then we have this girl. We have the opposite of Ellie, the old age in the Norse tale, the counterpoint to it. We have youth, and that youth that we all have youth at one time in our lives. And of course, we don't really appreciate it until it's gone. It's a sobering thought as someone who is still quite young. I'm 27, and I would like to think that I am enjoying my youth, but I have no doubt that when it is gone, I will look back and think of all the things I could have done. That's just human, and we try to live our lives with as few regrets as possible, as we know how much they can eat away at us. I've seen it happen with many, many people. So we have the very somber, sobering thought of youth who we all had. And then finally we have the old man himself. So the old man himself is death. And only death can control the world. And it makes sense that youth would live in this world with death, as indeed old age would live there. You would feel Ellie, the wet nurse of Utgard Loki, was about to come into the house there. And this, as they always are, this is very much my version of this story. But one place I thought Robin Williamson was perfect was with this ending. Usually, I will wrap stories up a little bit, try and put a nice little bow on them at the end, but this felt like a tale that just ended with that my name is death. And that is where I stayed very similar to Williamson's version, because that was just a perfect ending. I highly recommend it. Look him up on Spotify or on YouTube. Robin Williamson, Fionn Mac Cumhaill in The Old Man's House. Wonderful harp player. The harp is the original accompaniment to Irish music and to Irish stories. It is as old and traditional as it gets, the idea of playing a harp while telling a tale, which of course speaks right up to my liking of things. I adore that kind of thing, and the harp is such a beautiful instrument anyway. So it's well worth listening to that and other stuff of his. And with that, I am going to begin to wrap things up. And you know what? That was actually quite a nice... My first episode back recording from home, that actually was quite a nice one. It had been a few months since I had recorded one of these from home, so I had to kind of refigure out how to set up the recording and all with this mic and get the acoustics right and all. So I hope it sounds good. When we're in the editing room now, the editing room, it's the same as the recording room. I'll know now, and I'll be able to see, and hopefully you won't be able to notice too much of a drop in quality. I mean, theoretically, it's a really good mic I invested in, and it's really only the room itself, which I don't think you hear too much of because I stay quite close to the mic. But it naturally is just a bedroom. It's not a soundproofed recording studio like the beautiful Serenities of the Head Stuff Podcast Network studio. The thing you just really have to contend with is what's outside. For example, I have this neighbour. He's a very old hermit. He's a kind of Boo Radley, Kill a Mockingbird kind of figure. And he has a car that is so old, and he doesn't even really drive it anywhere. But what he does is he just comes out once a day, and it always seems to be exactly when I'm recording the podcast, to just run the engine. So I just have to contend with this for several minutes, and it's a nightmare, and it feels like he's doing it specifically to thwart me. And then we also had a bit of hedge trimming at the beginning there, which didn't last actually as long. When I heard the hedge trimming start before I recorded, I thought, well, I'm never getting this episode recorded now. But then it actually did stop, so I hope you didn't hear it at all. So those are the things you're contending with, you know, which, hey, it's all part of it, and delighted to have it, and delighted to have you all still listening to it. So I feel we're back in the groove now. Good episode to start it back with, and I'm excited to continue recording Fireside from home until we can return to Head Stuff once again. And with that, thank you to all of the Head Stuffs, nonetheless, to Alan, Paddy and Connor, for continuing to allow me to do this with your fine selves. Thank you all so much for listening. Please do follow me on Instagram at FiresideBard. Email me at thefiresidebard@gmail.com. Support the patreon.com to further the world, to further the tradition of Irish storytelling, and the very exciting new project that I can't wait to tell you all about. I'll see you all, you'll hear me all next time, and remember, wherever you are and wherever you go, you can always join me by the fireside.
This podcast is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network.